You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey everybody on Facebook Live, we're about to get started with the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around, this is going to be a really fun show. Can't wait to talk to you about Nikki Haley at the UN, the GOP fallout here in Arizona, and we're about to begin, so stay tuned.
To the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Today is Sunday, December the 10th, in the year of our Lord 2017. It is the second Sunday of Advent, and today we need to talk about a rather holy subject indeed, Jerusalem. It's having a bit of an identity crisis of late, and we're going to touch on that a bit. We're also going to discuss the United Nations and the sudden emergence of the strongest American leadership we've ever seen there in the body of one Nikki Haley. And finally, it couldn't be an Arizona podcast without talking about the epic blowback from Trent Frank's resignation and Jet Flake's announcement that he will not seek re-election. All that and more here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HollowNet has been approved. Please stand by.
I, fellow citizens, recent events have imposed upon the patriotic people of this country a responsibility and a duty greater than that of any since the Civil War.
It is the common people of the world that are interested in this business. They know when we have war, it is they that have to bear the burden. It's their sisters and mothers and daughters that have to wait, trembling, to hear the news.
We are called as a people to give testimony in the sight of the world to our faith that the future shall belong to the free. Since this century's beginning, a time of tempest has seemed to come upon the continents of the earth.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Good afternoon. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network, live from beautiful, finally cold Phoenix, Arizona. And cold is a relative term. It's like in the 70s. I'm your host, Matt Holloway, and we are getting closer and closer, inching little bit by little bit closer to Christmas. Yes, it is second Sunday of December, which means second Sunday of Advent. For those of you keeping track, you're going to light that second candle tonight. Have some fun with that. Read a little bit of Bible to your kids if that's your gig. If you're not a Christian, if you're a Jew, enjoy your Hanukkah celebration coming up. If you celebrate any of the other holidays, God bless you and love you. I'm not going to rattle them off one by one because we'll be here all freaking day. All right. We have a ton to get into, and I'm a little torn, really, about where I want to start. We have the Jerusalem situation. President Donald Trump earlier this week announced to a rather surprised world that Jerusalem is indeed the capital of Israel. Wow, go figure. I mean, they've only had their Knesset parliament there, the Office of the President, Ministry of Defense, every single one of their governmental ministries for the past 30 years. And not to mention the fact that it is the traditional cultural heart of the Jewish culture, Judaism, and all things appertaining to it, with numerous biblical mentions for the last 2,000 years. That's 2 with 3 zeros. Oh, what do you mean it's their capital? Yeah. So the entire world was taken massively by surprise, and something that Congress passed 20 years ago. I'm pretty sure Clinton was in office at the time when the American people, via Congress, said in one clear voice that we accept Jerusalem and only Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Yeah. Whole bunch of hubbub about it. I'm going to go to Drudge Report, taking a look at that now. Drudge Report's throwing us to the Wall Street Journal saying Mideast tensions simmer in the wake of U.S. shift in Israel policy. Even though when you think about it, it's not really a big shift in policy. It's more a president acknowledging that there actually is a policy and not using the waiver. Rory Jones reports from Tel Aviv. Pockets of anger surfaced Sunday in the Middle East and Asia over the Trump administration's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, but predictions of widespread upheaval failed to materialize as riots petered out in the Palestinian territories. Inside a festering regional dissent, protesters gathered outside of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut on Sunday with Lebanese security forces firing tear gas and water cannons at demonstrators. Protesters carried Palestinian flags and set fire to tires near the embassy, but the unrest was largely calmed by late afternoon. So all sound and fury signifying absolutely bupkis, nada, nothing. Nothing changed. Nothing's gonna change. The President of the United States finally acknowledged a little bit of reality that the capital of Israel is indeed Jerusalem. Now, I don't think anybody said this any better at all than Madam Ambassador Nikki Haley before the United Nations, as she was eloquent and forceful in the way that she put this, in a way that you just don't see anymore. And I want to touch on that a little bit. I'm going to see if I can nail the timestamp just right. But I think the best clip possible referred to the American people no longer kowtowing or not being lectured to by nations that have no proven track record with dealing with Palestine or with Israel. So we're going to go to that audio really quick from Madam Ambassador Nikki Haley. Let me see if I can nail that up for you.
Those are the facts of what was said and done this week. Now there are a few more points that are central to the discussion of this issue. Israel, like all nations, has the right to determine its capital city. Jerusalem is the home of Israel's parliament, president, prime minister, Supreme Court, and many of its ministries. It is simple common sense that foreign embassies be located there. In virtually every country in the world, U.S. embassies are located in the host country's capital city. Israel should be no different. The United States took this step in full knowledge that it will raise questions and concerns. Our actions are intended to help advance the cause of peace. We must recognize that peace is advanced, not set back, when all parties are honest with each other. Our actions reflected an honest assessment of reality. I understand the concern members have in calling this session. Change is hard, but we should never doubt what the truth can do. We should never doubt that when we face the truth, believe in the human spirit, and encourage each other, that peace can happen. To those who have good faith concerns about the future of peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, let me again assure you that the President and this administration remain committed to the peace process. To those who do not act in good faith, to any person, leader, country, or terrorist group that uses this week's decision as a pretext for violence, you are only showing yourselves to be unfit partners of peace. Finally, I will not let this moment pass without a comment about the United Nations itself.
All right, here's the meat and potatoes. Here's the good part. I mean, all of that was great. All of that was accurate. But here's where you can almost hear her, cock it back and get ready for the shot. Here we go. It's going to be shots fired at the UN. That's just a phrase. There's actually no gunplay going. But she's going to verbally eviscerate them right here.
Over many years, the United Nations has outrageously been of the world's foremost centers of hostility towards Israel. The UN has done much more damage to the prospects for Middle East peace than to advance them. We will not be a party to that. The United States no longer stands by when Israel is unfairly attacked in the United Nations. And the United States will not be lectured to by countries that lack any credibility when it comes to treating both Israelis and Palestinians fairly. It is no coincidence that the historic peace agreements between Egypt and Israel and between Jordan and Israel were both signed on the White House lawn. If and when there's a historic peace agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, there's a good likelihood that it too will be signed on the White House lawn. Why is that? It's because the United States has credibility with both sides. Israel will never be, and should never be, bullied into an agreement by the United Nations or by any collection of countries that have proven their disregard for Israel's security. To my Palestinian brothers and sisters, I can tell you with complete confidence that the United States is deeply committed to achieving a peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We have demonstrated that commitment over many years and with the investment of large quantities of financial resources and diplomatic energy. Sadly, peace between the two sides has not been achieved, but we will not give up. Our hand remains extended to you. We are more committed to the cause of Israeli-Palestinian peace today than we've ever been before, and we believe we might be closer to that goal than ever before. Both Israelis and Palestinians have very real stories to tell, painful stories of challenges, distrust, and destruction. But this conflict is not just about the past. It must not be about all of those painful stories. It must be about future generations. Palestinian and Israeli children both deserve a future of peace. One no more and no less than the other.
I'm going to go ahead and cut off Madam Ambassador there, but I just have to say, I'm a little bit of a nerd. If you haven't watched my show before, you haven't really gotten a grasp for that. So I'm just going to give you a little soundbite here from the hypothetical Starship United Nations.
Abandoned ship.
Yeah, that baby's going down. The United Nations just got leveled under the shots fired, under the heat, under the flames from Nikki Haley, ambassador from the United States. And I'm going to come right out and say that on Twitter the other day, it was a little bit into the wee hours, but I posted up there, Nikki Haley for Secretary General of the United Nations. Saying it now, saying it here, the UN can only and will only survive and have any chance of completing its mission under this kind of strong, principled American leadership. I'm not saying under the leadership of President Trump per se, because President Trump doesn't directly interface with that body. I'm saying under the leadership of former South Carolina, I believe it was, South Carolina Governor Nikki freaking Haley. Lady is a firebrand and the best thing that has happened to the United Nations since it was moved to New York. All right? This is the knockdown, drag out, no holds barred diplomacy that the Obama administration couldn't stomach and instead kowtowed to that horrifically bloated and inefficient corpse of an organization for the last 8 years. So it's a new day coming at the United Nations. There's a truck driving through, and behind the wheel is Nikki Haley. Now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the fallout and blowback from the Jerusalem capital announcement from President Trump. We're going to talk about President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, whose name I am way too good at pronouncing because nobody's covering this dude, and he's dangerous. We're going to talk about that coming back here from the break. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. We're here to fix the machine, and here at the HollowNet, we hold the line against the night. Hey there on Facebook Live, do me a favor, share this one out. Let's get some conversation going. Got Charlie Ellis here in the chat box, Diane Philbin, thanks for joining. Let's get this one lit up because there's going to be some big stuff for Arizona coming.
Or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. And the principles that founded our nation. That all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories. But the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century. When we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism. When we we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. When we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there is one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Welcome back. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix. I'm Matt Holloway. You want to follow the show? You can find us on Facebook.com/HollowNet, thehollownet.com, tweet at Matt D. Holloway or at the HollowNet. I am pleased to inform you now that we will be available on BitChute.com if YouTube is not your bag, because we don't like censorship here at the HollowNet. And we also have opened up a page on Makersupport.com. So if you'd like to support the show, please, for the love of everything that is good and holy, if you would like to support the show, because this is not a for-profit venture at this time, in fact, it's costing me money, let's go ahead and go over to Makersupport.com, because unlike Patreon.com, there's not a large upfront chunk taken out of it, so you can rest more assured that your money will reach its intended destination on Makersupport.com. Hashtag not a sponsor. Anyway. Got to get back to these events that are brewing and percolating in Israel, and as my good buddy Stephen Airy Jr. of the Defenders of American Exceptionalism also asserted, I am way too good at pronouncing the name Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey. Why? Because he's a bad dude. He's not cool. This dude is definitely an Islamist. I'm not saying he's an extremist yet, but he is definitely of an Islamist persuasion and tends to gravitate those types of people around him. There was a failed coup against him last year by some of the more moderate portions of the Turkish military, who, constitutionally speaking, are the guardians of that country. They are, in fact, constitutionally charged and empowered to take out what they believe to be a corrupt or dangerous government. There was an attempt to do this last year, which failed. So that should tell you all that you need to know about the current Erdogan administration. So, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in a story on Yahoo.com, Istanbul, according to the AFP, relations between Israel and Turkey took a bitter turn on Sunday as their leaders traded accusations of involvement in terrorism days after U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he would fight against the controversial declaration describing Israel as a, quote, terrorist state that kills children in a speech in Istanbul. Because you can't go back to Constantinople, because Constantinople is Istanbul. Remember that. Hours later, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hit back, calling his counterpart a leader who bombs Kurdish villages and supports terrorists during an official visit to Paris. The two countries had normalized relations in recent years, but Sunday's flare-up came after Turkey was angered by U.S. President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Trump's move has sparked protests in Muslim and Arab countries for 4 days. Erdogan said in a speech in the central Turkish city of Sivas, Palestine is an innocent victim. As for Israel, it is a terrorist state. Yes, terrorist. We will not abandon Jerusalem to the mercy of a state that kills children. Okay, so Jerusalem will not be taken over by Turkey anytime soon. That means the Iranians won't be moving in, nor will the Syrians, nor will the Iraqis, nor will the, let me see, who did I miss? Nor will the Pakistani government be stepping in, because they have all, in their given turn, killed children. All of them. Not saying it's right. Not saying it's good. But There has been no war in the Middle East that has ever occurred wherein civilians, women and children, were not in the crosshairs. So, probably one of the most hypocritical statements in the history of the Turkish people. Just ask the Armenians, the Kurds, insert your ethnic minority in Turkey here. When the opening of the 20th century was spent wiping out Yazidis, Armenian Christians, and Greeks. By the boatload. Literally in some cases. Yeah, Recep, you want to tell me again how that means you're a terrorist state? Well, baby, you might want to strap on that suicide vest. Because you just branded yourself and your government a terrorist state. A little bit of a problem given the fact that Turkey is a NATO affiliate. So for anybody who's paying attention, Israel, American ally, Turkey, American ally. Mixing it up, not good. We're automatically caught in the middle of that. So pay attention. Everybody's been worried about ISIS for so long, and al-Baghdadi, now a dead guy, putting together a new caliphate. We've forgotten to pay attention to the seat of the old caliphate. Or don't you remember, or don't you know that history class, where there was something called the Ottoman Empire, and they were not based around furniture, folks. This was the caliphate. This was the Islamist state that was centered in Istanbul, wherein Libya and all of the Barbary states, they were called it, at the time, when we went to war with them in the late 1700s, early 1800s, were tributary states of the Ottoman Empire. We've been to war with them before. And now it seems that Erdogan has in his mind to reassert Turkish dominance over the Islamic world. Pay attention, it's going to get rough. And this is going to be an erstwhile alliance, mark my words. And I do agree with you that Constantinople is a much cooler name. I would play that song, but I'm pretty sure Weird Al would be pissed. So, moving right along from Turkey, the other piece that I want to talk about here is going back to Nikki Haley a little bit. Nikki Haley's really cool. If you haven't listened to some of her speeches, I strongly recommend it. It's excellent YouTube fodder. Hop on there, just pull up Nikki Haley and watch the sparks fly. I mean, this lady has got like 6 guns, and she's just launching across the table at anybody that dares or deigns to question America's sincerity at the table of the United Nations. And she throws down against Russia on a regular basis, against China on a regular basis. Pretty much the only ambassador she hasn't told to ST frick you in recent memory, I think, is her British counterpart. That's about it. Everybody else has been on the receiving end of a thorough verbal detonation at the hands of Madam Ambassador Nikki Haley. The reason why this is interesting is New York Times, all the muck that's fit to rake, printed a story by Emily Cochran today that Nikki Haley says women who accuse Trump of misconduct should be heard. Duh! No one, at any point, who has any substance or credibility, has said that these accusers and accusations should not be heard. I have never even heard of even the most strident Trump supporter saying that these women should be denied the opportunity to speak. Or that they should be denied the opportunity to bring charges if they have charges to bring, or to bring accusations if they have accusations to bring. But this goes back to our conversation last week that there must be proof. There has to be evidence, testimony, actionable proof. There has to be a legal standard here. And I mixed it up the other day with the good guy on Facebook. My name is Sean, on a friend of mine named Jason's feed, because he was talking about Roy Moore. And we were talking about what the different standards are and what the burden of proof is on different pieces. And it really is absolutely crucial that the burden of proof is incredibly high in these instances. You cannot ruin somebody's life. And let's not split hairs here. Roy Moore, whether he wins office or whether he doesn't win office, his life is flippin' devastated. Now, if he did it, fine, cool, I don't care, because he deserves it if he did it. If he didn't do it, then this nation probably owes that guy an apology, because his life is wrecked. Anybody who is falsely accused of the kind of things that he is, it's a long road back, and you might not come back, depending on your line of work. So, should these women be heard? Absolutely. Every one of the accusers should be heard. Every one of the accusations should be heard in a court of law, where evidence can be weighed, and if charges are warranted, be levied. And then the person be tried by their peers. Justice. Innocence until proven guilt. But that's not what we're seeing today in the media, is it? We're seeing trial by media, trial by social media, which is mob justice. Get out your pitchforks and your torches, because that's all it amounts to. And that's what we're seeing today. So Roy Moore, and his accusers, more importantly, deserve, they need their day in court. The day at the circus needs to end. So that's my response there. I agree with Nikki Haley. The accusers definitely need to be heard. But I believe that the venue needs to be a little more legalistic and a little less sensationalistic. With that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive headlong, headfirst, and hopefully it's not a shallow canal, into Arizona's GOP implosion. All that here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around for half hour 2. It's going to get fun.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, and I want to thank you for your continued listenership and readership and all the support that you've given me and everyone here at Lanterns over the course of the last year or so. Now, as we come up on a year of delivering this podcast on a weekly basis, we've begun to feel a bit more like a community here at Lanterns.buzz, and right now, we're a community that's in need of assistance. So I wanted to call on all of you today, if you can, to log on to patreon.com and search for Lanterns on patreon.com. That's patreon.com/lanterns, because we need your assistance in order to build this network out bigger, stronger, and better than it's ever been. With your support, we can bring in more voices that have been stifled. We can celebrate American exceptionalism. We can grow and educate our people. We can lift a lantern to shine a light into the darkness. Our mission is to shine a light on the actions that our government is taking now or have taken in the past to threaten the rights of Americans without consideration to the political party or organization. We will expose destructive counterculture that aim to destroy the idea of America and celebrate the parts of our culture that live up to the great ideals formally expressed by our founders. Up until now, our entire operations have been funded from the generous contributions of our team members. That generosity has created a growing demand for our pro-American content, and with that growth has come new challenges to expand our operations. Our goal is to expand and maintain the operations of our website and the radio network. And we humbly and graciously ask that you consider supporting Lanterns.buzz by becoming a patron on Patreon.com. Again, that's www.patreon.com/lanterns.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Matt Holloway. Anybody notice that when it comes to Arizona politics, especially the congressional ones, all hell kind of busted loose last week? I'm just putting that out there. I mean, in the national scale, we have this whole, hashtag Me Too thing that's going through and has claimed many, many, many of our, public figures and now congressmen and all that. And Al Franken is, not resigned. He's going to resign, but he's not admitting he did anything wrong. On the other hand, you have Republican Trent Franks, who did come out and admit that he had an inappropriate conversation with one of his aides. The news has now come out that apparently he offered one of his congressional staffers a sum of $5 million in order to become a surrogate mother, as he and Mrs. Franks are infertility issues, or were infertility issues at the time, and have had 2 other children by surrogacy. And this was a bad conversation to have with an employee. And I kind of get that. You can become kind of numb to that sort of thing. And somebody posted in the comments that I saw before that, they remember a time where asking somebody to become a surrogate was a highest possible compliment. But you have to take this into the context of the place of employment. If somebody works for you, if a woman works for you, and you ask them such a personal thing, there has to be, and in this case there was, according to the allegation, a fear of retribution, and the individual who brought this charge to the ethics committee felt that since she refused to become a surrogate mother for the Franks, that since then her access to the congressman was cut down and was given less assignments, less things to do. So she felt that there was some retribution there, and this is the inherent problem when you take something so personal and you bring it into the workplace. So just bad idea. And, Congressman Franks has been very upfront with it. Said, I goofed on that when I screwed up, so I'm going to take the bow and I'm going to resign before this whole thing gets dragged through an ethics committee and, gets sensationalized. You can't really stop the train from coming, though. It's going to get sensationalized. It already has. Some of the headlines I've seen, especially AZ Central, have been rather cruel to the Frankses. I think this is a rough time. And, Trent Franks and I don't agree on a lot of things, but I think that this one, just let him go quietly into the night. He's taking his punishment on the chin honorably, as a man should, and that's that. Now, really, the fallout comes down to this. Who the hell's gonna run? I mean, recently I've put some contacts out to the candidate Chris Sylvester for Congressional District 8. That is my congressional district here in western Maricopa County. And he's running, has been putting together a campaign for a little bit, has been soundly dismissed, it seems, by AC Central, not mentioned in their stories, or by CBS 5, the big CBS affiliate here. They haven't really mentioned his candidacy, even though it's been on record for quite some time. So, Chris Sylvester, the HollowNet recognizes your candidacy for the CD8 congressional seat. I have reached out to them before. We couldn't really make the schedules line up. Bit of that was my fault because I'm a goof. I'll go ahead and let Homer yell at me. Yeah, I was hanging up Christmas lights at the time. But we're going to try to get Chris Sylvester on. If he can make it work, that'd be awesome. Now, we've also come to find out that there are a number of other potential candidates for that seat. Steve Montenegro, who is currently my state senator for Legislative District 13, has now come out and said Trent Franks asked him to run. We have that audio from a Facebook Live from Steve Montenegro right here.
So hey everyone, it's Steve here. Thanks for being on today. Listen, I just want to chat with you for a little bit, just for a moment. It's been quite a last 24 hours, as you all have seen. And, well, I wanted to share something with you. So Trent has asked me to run, and that's an honor. As you know, that's something that's really special. Congress it's the foundation of our democracy, our representative republic. So, as many of you know, I'm already running for Secretary of
Sorry, folks, I have a little too much lag there on Steve Montenegro's video. But Steve Montenegro went on to say that despite the fact he's already running for Secretary of State, Representative Trent Franks has asked him to run for his seat now, for CD8 here in Arizona. So there has not been a solid declaration of Steve Montenegro that he does intend to run, but that suddenly shows us that there is an heir apparent, that Trent Franks indeed has enlisted the aid of Steve Montenegro, who previous experience is a 2-term, I believe, before it was term limit. That might be 3-term. 3-term representative at the Arizona House of Representatives, and now is on his first term in the Arizona Senate, and is also running to replace Michelle Reagan as Secretary of State. He announced that this past year, but now may go ahead and run for CD8. Now, this kind of ties into a story on CBSNews.com that, according to Catherine Watson, a TV crew overhears Trent Franks discussing plans to establish a $2 million PAC. Now, this I kind of drew a connection to of my own accord from Twitter the other night, discussing things with Chris Merrill, formerly of KFYI, out here right now. He's doing some fill-in work on 600 Kogo, K-O-G-O, in San Diego. Good guy. So I'll read you from that real quick. A local TV crew from Minnesota said they heard now former Rep. Trent Franks discussing setting up a political action committee 4 hours before he announced his immediate resignation on Friday, and after Franks later said his wife had been hospitalized the night before. So a crew from Fox 9 in Minnesota was at Hotel Palomar in Washington, D.C. on Friday when they noticed Franks talking loudly on his cell phone. Sorry, I gotta say it. So apparently he was doing the old man yell into his cell phone. Come on, Trent. Talking loudly into his cell phone. The reporter Tom Liddon understood as a conversation about soliciting $2 million to establish a PAC to advocate for reforming the Senate filibuster. When confronted, Franks did not deny the conversation or its contents. So, okay, he's looking to set up a PAC to reinstate the Senate filibuster. That's one thing. But if you're looking to set somebody up as the heir apparent who's already dedicated their war chest to capturing the Secretary of State seat, wouldn't it make sense to try to set them up a PAC to get them elected? Now, granted, we're not looking at a high contest seat here from a blue versus red, Democrat versus Republican setting here in CD8. In fact, I think the Democrats ran, I think it was Aisha Graves last go-around. If they ran anybody at all, Aisha Graves might have ran actually on the state level. I don't even know if they ran anybody against Trent Franks last go-round, because CD8's a deadlock. I mean, even if you're a Republican who's looking to run, a conservative, someone, you know, millennial, and conservative, and constitutional wanted to run for office. Yeah, it's almost impossible, and all the movers and shakers in the government would tell you, no, you don't want to do it because Trent's, he's a deadlock. It's a safe seat. Why would you want to mess that up? But now we have Chris Sylvester, Steve Montenegro's a maybe. We've also heard from Kimberly Yee of the Arizona State Senate. That's Kimberly Yee, Y-E-E. Debbie Leschko, notable Republican, and Phil Lovas, another notable Republican who actually became a member of the Trump administration for the Small Business Administration for the Southwest, has been looked at now as possibly being tapped for this. It gets even thicker now because we have Jeff Flake's seat that's opened up, and we've reported on this before. You have Dr. Kelly Ward, who ran against Senator John McCain last go-around, who's now running against Jeff Flake. I'd definitely like to talk to Dr. Kelly Ward about all this. And now in the news, Sheriff Joe Arpaio is talking about running for Jeff Flake's Senate seat. That is 80-something-year-old Sheriff Joe Arpaio is bandying that about as a possibility. And now Martha McSally even discussing running for Senator Flake's seat. So we are looking at basically the implosion and shuffling of chairs here at the Arizona GOP. And that's going to leave room at the state level. That's going to leave state House seats vacant. That's going to leave state Senate seats potentially vacant. That's going to leave a walk of a race for Michelle Reagan if Steve Montenegro decides to pull out of it. It's going to get very interesting. What happens with Rep. Martha McSally if she successfully runs against Jeff Flake? Then there's a vacancy election in the Tucson area. So the deck is getting shuffled hard here in the Arizona GOP, so we need to keep well attuned to that on a national scale. We could see many seats change hands very quickly, and it could be the changing face of conservatism here in the Grand Canyon state. So with that, I'm going to take one last quick break, and then we're going to jump into what's trending on Twitter, what's trending on the news at large, and set up for the week ahead. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. From Phoenix, I'm Matt Holloway. Stick around.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HollowNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Thanks for joining us. We're on the last couple of minutes here, like the home stretch of this hour here on the HollowNet, and we're going into the holidays. So we're week 2 of December now, week 2 of Advent, and a little bit to talk about before we kind of cut loose here and go about our ways for the week ahead, and I wanted to make sure that I touched on those for you. Now, today is Human Rights Day, according to Twitter, hashtag Human Rights Day, and Human Rights Day celebrates the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations, which is a vaunted and valid thing. I mean, everybody wants human rights to be accepted and enforced around the world, especially Saudi Arabia, who sits on the Human Rights Committee and practices Sharia law and cuts the hands off of thieves in the middle of shopping malls, and very recently only decided that women could drive and all that fun stuff. And by the way, don't ever get caught drinking there. Don't ever get caught drinking there. They don't like that in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, they sit on the Human Rights Council. Let me see here. Who currently sits on the Human Rights Committee? UN Human Rights Committee. Human Rights Council. Because I just want to see how genuine all of this is. That's the OHCHR, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. Let's see who's got current membership in that thing. It runs from 1st January, so let's see. Stunning nations, it's 31, it's a bunch of them. Let's see, Albania, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Botswana, the Congo sits on the Committee for Human Rights. The Congo, yeah, nothing bad ever happened in the Congo. El Salvador, Ghana, India, Indonesia, Latvia, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Paraguay, Portugal, Qatar. Wow, Qatar sits there. Doha, home of the U.S. 4th Fleet, I believe it is, in the Persian Gulf. No, they never do anything shady. Belgium, Burundi, the Ivory Coast. No, nothing bad ever happened there insofar as human rights are concerned. Ecuador, Ethiopia. Oh, man, their human rights are on lock, aren't they? Georgia, Germany, Kenya, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Panama, Philippines. Wait, the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, you might want to check on his human rights record. I believe he's killing drug dealers. Let's see here. The Republic of Korea, so South Korea, Slovenia, Switzerland, Togo, the United Arab Emirates. Yeah, that's all good. Venezuela, Brazil, China. Yeah, China. They have an absolutely spotless human rights record, don't they just? Croatia, wait for it, Cuba. Viva Castro has a seat on the UN Committee of Human Rights. Are you kidding? Yeah, I'm supposed to take this crap seriously. Let's see here. Egypt, Hungary, Iraq. No, I can't make this crap up, guys. Japan, Rwanda. Hotel Rwanda. Did you see that flick? Good movie. Real sad. Crap actually happened. Oy. Saudi Arabia, there it is. South Africa, a little thing called apartheid that they recently got rid of. Tunisia, the UK, and of course the United States of America. So this is the current membership of the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. And I am actually supposed to take their pronouncements, their policy decisions seriously? I'm supposed to laud them? I'll laud and I'll applaud the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 70 years ago from the United Nations. It'd be nice if somebody flippin' stuck to it. It would be nice if, as Nikki Haley said, a country with a shred of credibility actually headed up this thing and had a prominent voice. But no. You have easily a dozen nations on there with abhorrent human rights records. So spare me your hashtag. You want to talk about human rights? Let's talk about human rights. Let's talk about who polices the police on that one. Who's watching the watchdogs? Pathetic. Spare me your hashtag until it is legitimate. Until it is credible. Justin Trudeau. On Human Rights Day and every day, let's come together to build a world where everyone, no matter their identity, beliefs, or circumstances, is born free and equal in dignity and rights. Great statement. Fantastic statement. But I really, really do wish that the esteemed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada would remind his Cuban buddies of that sentiment. This is what happens. You have something that looks good on the surface, like a celebration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it gets muddied and clouded by the fact that conservatively a third of the bloody countries that are on there are bloody countries indeed. And many of them either continue to deny their violations of human rights, or they even continue to execute those violations of human rights. But here I am. I'm supposed to applaud Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and people who don Che Guevara shirts and change their Facebook profile page to match, and say how proud I am that they're standing up for human rights. when there's sexual slavery run rampant in the Middle East right now and in Southeast Asia. Young women and children being turned into sexual slaves and prostitutes being turned out, essentially raped to death because their faith doesn't match that of their captors. Where in the streets of Sweden today, according to news only 3 hours old, there are parades marching down the street shouting anti-Semitic slurs throughout areas dominated by refugees from the Middle East. Where in Stockholm, it is very difficult for a woman to walk down the street without the prospect of being sexually violated by multiple men. But oh yes, it's Human Rights Day. On that cheerful note, good night. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix, I'm Matt Holloway. Let's keep our eye on the ball. All right, everybody on Facebook Live, thank you very much. I know the show ended on a weird note there, but just unbelievable, the hypocrisy that we see and the grandstanding from these states and nations that are the height of human rights and deign to tell us in the United States how we should behave, that we're homophobes, that we're racists, and that we're all these manner of horrible things because we elected President Donald Trump to the White House, and because we have conservative small government beliefs that we're the worst people in the world, and we're being told this from the Human Rights Council and people who support them, when a large chunk of that very committee is comprised of some of the worst offenders in the history of mankind. Kind of wish I would have started the show there, but it happens, and sometimes when that rant grabs you, that rant just don't let go, and I ran out of time. So hey, maybe next time we'll bring that up a little bit further, the utter calamitous hypocrisy of the United Nations on its human rights record. In the meanwhile, I hope I leave you on a little bit more of a cheerful note here on the Facebook Live and on the YouTube. Good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Hey everyone, this is Matt Holloway, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast so far. It's been exciting putting this together for you, and I'm looking forward to many more to come. I did want to let you know that in setting up the HollowNet and getting everything launched here, we've gone ahead and set up a page on Patreon.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Patreon, Patreon is a website that's similar to other crowdfunding sources that allows you to support on a month-to-month basis those sources, those artists, and those groups that you really care about and that you're passionate about. And I hope that we can ignite passion in a lot of people to become more involved in the political process, and also to become involved in the conversation and to keep that political dialogue alive. So I'd like to humbly ask you today to consider becoming a patron of the HollowNet on Patreon.com, and you can access that at Patreon.com/theHollowNet. We have various levels of patronage. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which unlocks exclusive content for the Patreon community, such as a feed of patron-only content. Then you have a $5 option, which gives you behind-the-scenes access to blog about the different inspirations that we have. It'll give you access to patrons-only polling. And then we have a $10 option, which gives you a signed digital poster plus everything else. $20 option, which gives you name in the credits on the site, and all other rewards towards, and we even have a segment sponsor package available on Patreon, which is $125 a month, which entitles you and your business to a 60-second ad as a segment sponsor during the podcast, of course, subject to content approval. So if you would like to become a patron of the HollowNet, we would be greatly thankful to you, and it's going to go toward a solid cause of generating this sort of millennial constitutional conservative content that is so lacking in our media today. So thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of the HollowNet. Here we hold the line against the night, and the millennial conservative resistance begins here.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.